Rome didn't dominate the ancient world by accident. They used weapons so strangely, so effectively, they still baffle historians today. But one question keeps coming up. How did a few sharp tools turn scattered soldiers into an unstoppable war machine? There's something buried in their arsenal that changes everything you thought you knew about power. Starting with the Spatha, Rome's longer cavalry sword that signaled a shift in how battles were fought. 28 to 36 inches of versatile steel, nearly twice the length of earlier Roman swords. This weapon was built for a new era of warfare. The Spatha could slash and stab equally well. Unlike earlier Roman swords that focused on stabbing, this longer blade gave cavalry the reach they needed for horseback combat. It was like upgrading from a butter knife to a proper carving knife. Sometimes you need that extra length to get the job done right. The rise of the Spatha coincided with major changes in Roman military tactics. By the 2nd century AD, enemies were adapting to Roman methods. Cavalry was becoming more important, and tight infantry formations were being used less frequently. Sword placement changed too. The Spatha was worn on the left side, unlike earlier Roman swords carried on the right. This wasn't fashion, it was practical. Cavalry soldiers needed to draw weapons quickly while controlling horses with their other hand. Versatility was the Spatha's greatest strength. Infantry could use it in loose formations where shorter swords would be inadequate. Cavalry could fight both mounted and on foot. It was like having a Swiss Army knife, except instead of tiny tools, you got 3 feet of sharp steel that could handle any situation. The Spatha's influence spread far beyond Roman borders. When barbarian tribes encountered Roman cavalry armed with these swords, they quickly saw the advantages. Many adopted similar weapons, making the Spatha the template for early medieval European swords. Roman engineers perfected the design over centuries. They improved metallurgy, refined balance, and standardized production across the empire. A Spatha made in Gaul would perform identically to one made in Syria. Quality control mattered when lives depended on equipment. By the late Empire, the Spatha had largely replaced shorter swords in most Roman units. This change reflected broader shifts in Roman warfare. The days of massive infantry formations were ending, replaced by more flexible cavalry-based tactics. It was the difference between being part of a machine and being a skilled craftsman, both deadly but in completely different ways. The Spatha proved that even the most successful military traditions must evolve or die. But cavalry needed support from infantry equipped with lighter, more flexible weapons. The Plumbata was Rome's weighted throwing dart, and it was the perfect personal missile weapon for soldiers who wanted to cause problems from medium range. These small iron darts had lead weights embedded in their shafts, making them fly straighter and hit harder than regular throwing weapons. Later Roman soldiers from the 3rd through 5th centuries carried 3 to 5 of these darts into battle. They were tucked inside shield hollows or strapped to soldiers' backs. It was like carrying a pocket full of flying angry bees, except the bees were made of metal and definitely had anger management issues. The lead weight was the secret sauce. It increased momentum, helping the dart punch through shields and armor that might stop lighter projectiles. Physics was working overtime here. More weight plus decent speed equals better penetration. Romans understood that sometimes you need extra oomph. These darts were used at medium range, thrown just before sword fighting began. Roman soldiers would advance to throwing distance, unleash their plumbata, then charge with blades drawn. It was harassment fire designed to soften up enemies before the real violence started. The beauty was in the simplicity. Plumbata were lightweight, cheap to make in huge quantities, and didn't require special training. Any Roman soldier could learn to throw them accurately with basic practice. It was the ancient version of point throw and hope something unpleasant happens to the other guy. Production was efficient and inexpensive. Roman workshops could crank out thousands quickly. Lead weights were easy to cast. Wooden shafts were simple carpentry, and iron tips were basic metalwork. Even smaller units could afford to equip their soldiers with these weapons. The plumbata emerged as Roman warfare evolved. Heavy equipment was being phased out for lighter, more flexible weapons. The plumbata gave soldiers missile capability without the weight of traditional spears. It was a military adaptation in action. A volley of Plumbata could disrupt enemy lines, wound key soldiers, and create chaos right before close combat. It was like throwing a handful of very sharp confetti at a party, except the party was a battle and the confetti was designed to ruin your day. The dart represented Rome's shift toward more practical, cost-effective weapons that any soldier could master quickly. But when Romans needed to break through heavy fortifications, they required much bigger solutions. The Onager was Rome's stone-throwing catapult, and it earned its name by kicking like a wild donkey when fired. This siege engine was all about raw, devastating power that could hurl stones the size of bowling balls at enemy fortifications in high, crushing arcs. The design was brilliantly simple: a vertical arm attached to twisted ropes with a sling at the end. When released, the arm would snap forward with tremendous force, launching whatever was loaded. It was like having a really angry giant who specialized in throwing rocks and had unlimited ammunition. The recoil was spectacular. When an onager fired, the entire machine would shake, jump backward, and make a noise like the world was ending. The crew had to stay clear or risk getting knocked flat by their own weapon. Hence the name. Wild donkeys kick hard, and so did this machine. Stone projectiles could punch holes in walls, shatter gates, and crush anything unlucky enough to be in their path. Romans used onagers for sustained bombardment during long sieges. Hour after hour, these machines would hurl destruction at enemy fortifications until something gave way. The high arc trajectory was key. Unlike other siege weapons that fired in straight lines, the onager could lob stones over walls to hit targets inside fortifications. It was like playing the world's most violent game of basketball, except the hoop was someone's fortress and the ball was a 60-pound rock. Operating an onager required a whole crew. Several men loaded ammunition, aimed the weapon, and reset it after each shot. The process was slower than other weapons, but the payoff was worth it. One good hit could do more damage than dozens of smaller projectiles. Accuracy wasn't the main point with onagers. When you're throwing bowling ball-sized stones at walls, you don't need surgical precision. You just need to hit somewhere in the general area and let gravity handle the rest. The psychological impact was enormous too. The onager was particularly effective against stone fortifications and packed enemy formations. Ancient walls weren't designed for repeated impacts from massive projectiles falling from above. The machine could find weak points and eventually bring down entire wall sections. But sometimes Romans needed precision over raw power. The Ballista was Rome's giant crossbow-style siege engine, and it was basically a sniper rifle that could thread a needle from half a mile away. This machine fired bolts and stones with twisted sinew cords that generated immense power and scary accuracy. The precision set the Ballista apart from other siege weapons. While most ancient artillery was glorified rock throwing, the Ballista could pick specific targets. Roman operators could nail enemy soldiers on walls, hit weak spots in fortifications, or even target enemy commanders giving orders. It was like having a very patient giant who spent all day practicing archery and never missed his target. The torsion system used twisted animal sinew or rope to store huge amounts of energy and release it instantly with incredible force. The ammunition was devastating. Iron bolts designed to penetrate armor, shields, and wooden defenses like they were made of paper. These projectiles could punch through multiple enemies in a line. Roman engineers created different bolt types for different jobs, some for penetration, others for maximum damage. Operating a ballista required real skill. Trained engineers set it up, experienced crews aimed it, and skilled soldiers maintained it. This wasn't point-and-shoot warfare. The crews calculated distance, wind speed, and target movement. Ancient artillery was part science, part deadly art. Romans could scale these weapons up for major sieges or down for battlefield use. Larger versions were mounted on towers or special platforms during battles. Smaller ones could be moved around the battlefield to provide support wherever needed. The sound alone was terrifying. That distinctive twang of the torsion system releasing, followed by the whistle of a bolt cutting through air. It was like hearing the world's most deadly violin being played by someone who really knew their instrument. The ballista played a major role in breaking enemy defenses from a distance. It could suppress defenders on walls while Roman infantry advanced, or pick off key targets that other weapons couldn't reach. The psychological impact was huge. Nowhere felt safe from these machines. But siege engines could only do so much from a distance. When Romans closed with the enemy, they needed weapons designed for personal combat. The Gladius was Rome's short infantry sword, and it turned close combat into a deadly science. 18 to 24 inches of double-edged efficiency, this compact blade was designed for one thing: ending fights as quickly as possible through precise stabbing. Romans didn't swing this sword like they were chopping wood. They stabbed with it. The pointed tip could slip between ribs, find armor gaps, and create deep puncture wounds that were almost always fatal. It was surgical precision, except the surgery was always terminal and the patient never got a second opinion. Why focus on stabbing instead of slashing? Simple anatomy. A deep stab wound hits vital organs. A slash, even a nasty one, might just be surface damage. Romans figured out that a small hole in the right place beats a big cut in the wrong place every time. The Gladius was perfect for Roman fighting formations. Roman soldiers fought packed together, shield touching shield. In that crowded space, you can't swing a long sword without hitting your buddies. The Gladius let you attack over your shield without causing friendly fire incidents. The sword was worn on the right side for quick draw behind the shield wall. This placement let soldiers draw and strike in one smooth motion while keeping their shield up for protection. It was like having a deadly jack-in-the-box, except instead of a surprise toy, enemies got a surprise hole in their chest. Romans actually borrowed this design from Iberian tribes during their conquest of Spain, but they improved it. Roman engineers standardized the measurements, perfected the steel quality, and mass-produced them across the empire with consistent specifications. The Gladius became the backbone of Roman infantry dominance for centuries. It was lightweight, perfectly balanced, and deadly effective in the tight formations that made Roman legions famous. This weapon helped conquer most of the known world. The Gladius changed how battles worked. Before this, much of ancient warfare was about individual warriors showing off with big weapons. Romans turned fighting into teamwork where everyone used the same sword and fought the same way. Eventually, though, the Gladius would be replaced as Roman warfare evolved. But before that happened, Roman soldiers needed weapons that could break enemy formations before the Gladius work even began. The pilum was Rome's heavy throwing spear, and it was a masterpiece of tactical engineering disguised as a simple javelin. About 6.5 feet long with a soft iron neck and sharp pyramidal point, this weapon was designed to be absolutely evil in the smartest way possible. Every Roman legionary carried one into battle as standard equipment. The design looked straightforward: wooden shaft connected to a long, thin iron neck topped with a pyramid-shaped point. But Roman engineers got sneaky with that iron neck. It was deliberately made from soft metal. When a pilum hit an enemy shield, it would bend on impact. Not break, bend. It was like throwing a really expensive boomerang that refused to come back and also happened to ruin your day. The enemy couldn't pull it out, couldn't throw it back, and couldn't use their shield properly anymore. The bending wasn't an accident or manufacturing flaw. Roman smiths deliberately made the iron neck soft so it would deform when it hit something solid. Once your pilum struck a target, it was permanently stuck there, making the enemy shield useless. But the pilum could do more than just disable shields. That pyramid tip concentrated all the throwing force into one tiny point. Basic physics made it devastatingly effective. The spear could punch straight through most shields anyway, often continuing into the soldier hiding behind it. Romans used these weapons in mass volleys thrown just before charging into close combat. Picture thousands of these spears flying through the air at once. Enemy formations would collapse before Romans even got close enough for sword work. It was like an ancient version of artillery prep, except the artillery was really angry soldiers with good throwing arms. The pilum was cheap, brutal, and effective. It solved the age-old problem of thrown weapons being picked up and used against you. Romans basically invented the world's first non-returnable weapon. Once thrown, it became useless to everyone except Roman blacksmiths who could straighten it out later. This one-use spear set up the kill for other weapons. The pilum's job was to break enemy formations and disable their defenses, creating opportunities for Roman swords to finish the job. But Roman military dominance wasn't built on Roman innovations alone. The falx was originally a Dacian weapon that became Rome's nightmare, and later one of their most feared tools. This long, inward-curving blade was designed to hook over shields and slice through Roman armor like it was made of cloth. It was so terrifying that it forced Romans to completely redesign their protective equipment. The two-handed version was absolutely devastating against armored opponents. It was like facing someone with a giant metal question mark, except the question was, how would you like to die? And the answer was always quickly and messily. The curved design gave it incredible leverage and cutting power. Here's what made the falx truly special. It could hook over the top of shields and pull enemies down while simultaneously cutting them. Roman shields were designed to stop straight attacks, not curved blades coming from above. The falx made traditional Roman defenses nearly useless. The weapon was so effective that Romans had to reinforce their helmets and develop new armor specifically to counter it. This was rare. Usually, Rome's equipment was superior to enemy weapons. The falx was different. It was genuinely better than anything Romans had at the time. Romans learned about the falx the hard way during their wars with the Dacians. Dacian warriors using these weapons could cut through Roman formations like farmers harvesting wheat. It was basically a medieval lawnmower, except instead of grass, it was designed to trim Roman soldiers. The falx could be used for both slashing and pulling down enemies. The curved blade concentrated force at the tip, while the hook shape let warriors drag opponents off balance. It was psychological warfare too. Nothing ruins morale like watching your armor get sliced open. This represents a rare example of Rome adapting an enemy weapon into their arsenal instead of the other way around. Usually, conquered peoples adopted Roman equipment. The falx was so effective that Romans swallowed their pride and started using it themselves. The falx proved that even Rome, with all its military engineering expertise, could learn from its enemies. Sometimes the best innovations come from the most unexpected places. Smart empires steal good ideas, regardless of where they come from. These 7 weapons didn't just win battles, they reshaped human civilization. Each one proved that superior engineering and tactical thinking can change the world forever.